so we're going to do one more. All right, so this is an
How do you
endgame.
make it wider? Wait.
And here's very interesting, right? If we push the pawn, they can take us, right?
Yeah, but then we
But
can take
here,
them.
take a look at this, right? If we push the pawn, they have to move this pawn. And then we can push the pawn for check, and the king will come down. But now, let's think about it more creatively. We want to checkmate them, right? We want a situation where our pawn checks them, and maybe our other pawn is here, this pawn is gone. Now we have some moves that we can burn, meaning we can play a3 or a5. Okay? The question is, how do we handle this? We need the g-pawn, or at least we need to be able to take and create a g-pawn.
Ethan, look at my screen.
No, it's fine.
So any suggestions here, guys? I mean, we can also just kind of abandon the mission here and just take the pawn on f6.
I think we push on a5 to a5.
See, so you'd push the pawn to a5, and then it makes him, so then he's got to play h3.
Yeah.
So if you take the pawn on h3, then the king will move forward. But maybe you could check him then.
Yeah.
And then the king has to move down. And then you move your king down.
Yeah.
And then if he pushes the pawn, because you don't want to stalemate him now. So what do you guys think? G3, G4, H3, A5, A3? What do you think?
I don't know. This is hard.
It is tough, definitely.
1G3. 1G3. G4.
So G3, okay, if G3, assume that he'll take you, right? Because if he doesn't take you, you're threatening checkmate. And if he takes you and you take back, then he's got to push that pawn.
I'm just a floating head. Oh.
What do you guys think here? So G3 seems to be like the move of choice. I guess if A5, then he has to play H3. And then if we have pawn check, the king has to move down. I mean, we could move our king down too. And then he's got to start pushing his pawns. Oh my God. What if we made him somehow go to G3 and we checkmated him by taking the pawn here? Right? So like pawn G4 check, pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. But no, we have to wait. So how do we have to set this up?
Okay, I muted myself.
What does that mean?
We have to set it up so that we force the pawn to move. Right? So maybe A5 first. Okay. Now G3 is stalemate, right? Everybody see that? So therefore, and we don't want to let him take our pawn, so let's check him. And now what do you think? So give me a suggestion. We're so far we're 2 for 2. But now what?
Wait.
Okay, so my suggestion here is to make him push this pawn. And then we'll play, so like if we play A3, right? Then he's got to push the pawn. And then if we play A4, whoops. So if I play a3, he's got to push the pawn. If I play a4, he's got to take the pawn. Here's the problem, though. If I move the king back at that point, his king can get away. So maybe when he plays a4, I can push the pawn. So let's see. So a3, pawn push, pawn g5, pawn takes pawn, pawn. Oh, wow. This is a special problem. Take a look at this. Now we're actually going to give this pawn up. And now we're going to play pawn a4. Did I lose you guys? Uh-oh, I hope I didn't lose you. Are you still there? Okay,
Yeah.
it didn't lag, did it?
No,
Okay,
it didn't.
so now I'm going to play pawn a4. And now he's got to move his pawn. And we get checkmate. Wow, that's one of the prettiest problems I've seen in a while. Let me back up and just show you guys how all of that was forced. Okay, so let's start with the very first move, a5. Does black have any other move but to play pawn h3?
No.
Or does he have to play it?
Yeah.
Has to, right? Okay, check. Does he have any other move but king h4?
No.
No.
Okay. Now after a3, what's his next move? It's a forced move.
H5.
He has to play it, right? And now we're going to push the pawn to g5, actually giving up a pawn, which looks absolutely wild. And if you didn't see the whole problem to the end in your mind, you would never want to do this, right? But because we understand it, it works. So he's got to take. There's actually no other option, right? The king can't go to g3 or g4. So he's got to take. And now we use our last pawn move. And here again, that last move was forced. And then after king f4, he's forced to